Davidson Day Community Podcast.
Our mission is to elevate student voices
and celebrate the people who make our school community an amazing place.
By the end of each podcast, you'll have an honest and reflective perspective on what it's like to be a part of Davidson Day School.
Here are our hosts, Jennifer Shiley, Director of Community Engagement, and Jessica Thompson, School Counselor.
Welcome, everybody, to the Davidson Day Community Podcast. I am Shiley. I'm one of your hosts, JT. Jess Thompson is here with us, along with these very special guests. Finally, we've been looking forward to this show for a minute.
Long time coming.
Yeah, so I can welcome Mr. Steve McGill and Miss Jillian Toya. Mr. McGill is English Department Chair. He's an upper school English instructor who is the reason most kids come back every year, if we're being honest. Head track coach. I don't know if you've seen him out there in the parking lot teaching students how to run hurdles. And then Jillian Toya, recently crowned homecoming queen. Congratulations. Yay. Brilliant scholar, athlete, theater star. So if you know anything about this upper school here, you've probably heard these names. So we're really thrilled that they're here with us today.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be on our podcast?
It feels very special.
So I'll let you guys in on something Megan, our producer, shared with JT and I a few weeks back, which was some data so we could see how our wonderful podcast is tracking in the 3 brilliant episodes we've recorded so far.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing was the statistics, the analytics show that like there are a significant number of listeners, of people downloading this podcast, which confirms what we thought might be true, which is that people want to hear what our students and teachers are saying. And not that the podcast wasn't special before, but there is something significant about the stories we can share from the day-to-day lives and to give a little bit of an insight and look at what's happening during the school day that you can't see in an email, you can't see, by just attending a game or a show. So something about these stories is really catching and clicking. So that's important to us. And I think to invite Steve and Jillian here will help us kind of try to figure out what is so special about these stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Steve and Jillian are the founders of the Untold Stories of DDS, which is the upper school newspaper, which we printed a copy of because Steve and Jillian shared a digital copy yesterday, but I don't know how people would get their hands on this if they don't go here, unless someone shares it with them. That's our first mystery question, how to look at this, because it's really a significantly cool paper. It features students who are doing everything from theater to sports to inserting their personal perspectives or stories through classes. And it just happens to be an incredible essay. They get to showcase that writing in this paper, stories about students who are doing work outside of the school. So I guess that is a long leadway into me asking the question I think I've already asked and then talked over. What's so special about these stories, guys? Tell us about stories from students and teachers that's significant and worth sharing in this paper.
Well, I think the whole point of us starting the newspaper was to just go on a different level of what people see with like a newsletter or like an email of what the kids are doing and the faculty, obviously. We wanted to actually show like the kids' lives and like what they think is important, and as a Davidson Day student, what you're doing outside of school and like day-to-day life that you don't see in a newsletter and don't see in an email.
Mm-hmm.
And we think it's showed the public and the community and even teachers like how like important these kids' lives are and how they're making a different impact in ways you don't see when in just a photo or something like that.
Yeah, like Jillian said, news is news, and you can find news and news outlets, so to speak. So, when we first came up with this idea, the idea was to tell stories that people might not know about at all, or stories that people have a familiarity with but don't realize the depths of it, So it's kind of like the first story we told was Caroline Donaldson's story of coming back from an ACL tear. And it was kind of like, we know Caroline was injured. We know Caroline missed the season her previous year, but we don't know the whole story of her rehab. We don't know the whole story of the self-doubt that she experienced. Let's tell that story. That was the idea. So with all the stories that we're doing, we're trying to show something that the untold part, if you will, of what you might be familiar with, but don't realize you're actually unfamiliar with.
I think you guys have done a phenomenal job because every time I read it, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I would have never known. Like, how was I supposed to know that? Especially if you don't come in contact with, these kids on a day-to-day basis. It is good to hear the untold stories. It's like pulling back a veil or pulling back a layer of a person that you wouldn't normally see. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's what we're looking to do. Exactly.
I find this often as an English teacher reading essays students submit is that truly every student has a story. And the more comfortable they are sharing that story, the more their individuality shines among this collective group of awesome kids. And so I find that your paper is doing something similar and giving the students a space where their voices are elevated in a way where we can see that one person. And I think, Steve, you said it, into a depth that we wouldn't otherwise catch just passing by, whether it's in the hallway or out in the community. How did you come up with this idea? Because this wasn't always in existence. Where did this come from?
I'll start with that one. I forget which class it was. I think it was composition last year. And the kids were working independently. And I was just thinking, because I had talked to Carolyn Donaldson earlier that day and didn't realize like 2 days from now, it's going to be her first game back. I was like, whoa. And so while the students were sitting there writing, and Caroline wasn't in this class, and Jilly was, and I looked at Jilly and said, hey, come here. How about we write a story? We start a newspaper, and our first story would be about Caroline. And it was kind of just like an intuitive moment because, Mr. Smith and I have been talking for years about getting a newspaper started. And we've had a couple false starts, so to speak. But the intuitive part was I knew that if I asked Jilly, it would get done. And so, I just looked at her and said, come here. And that was the genesis of it.
I remember, I think it was maybe an hour after you had asked me to write an article about Caroline, I sat down at the cubicles and I just wrote what I thought was just this raw outline. And I was like, he's not going to like this. I'm really nervous. Then I turned it in. He was like, this is perfect. Because originally I was super scared because I felt like this was a big job that I didn't know if I had I didn't know if I was able to do it as well as he hoped I would. And then he was like, this is perfect. I'm so excited. And that's when I knew it was going to become something big and something we could work on together that we could make into something really special.
So I want to ask a question because I've had the privilege of getting to share a classroom space with Steve. So I've watched him operate in a way that gives students space to be comfortable turning over something in writing where it's a little bit vulnerable to share, right? So what you just said, Jillian, was I have no idea if he's going to like this, but I just sat down and wrote it. So it came from you and out on paper. And it takes a lot of courage then to turn it over to another person, particularly a teacher. So how do you have that comfort level of just putting out what came from you into a space where Steve might receive it as potential partnership on this paper?
I think it was just in that exact moment, I knew that, I always struggle with knowing that the things I produce, I write a lot, knowing the things I produce is actually good writing and something people are going to want to read. And it was kind of just like the puzzle piece clicked and everything felt right when I saw that something I was able to put together, someone really thought was good. Because when I write stuff and write down little notes, I don't show anyone because I was scared I wouldn't get that validation. But then when I first saw it, it just put me in a whole new headspace and I felt like, I can really do this. And that's what's motivated me to keep writing stories and make it what it is today.
Let's go.
That's good. It seems like it gave you the confidence.
Yeah, definitely.
That you needed.
Definitely.
That's great.
And since that first episode, first edition or first issue, several issues of Untold Stories have come out. I think this is, it might have been the seventh.
Yeah.
So what makes a story? As you're thinking toward the next one, what are you considering writing about or what are you looking for?
Very good question. I'm looking for me personally, I think Jillian and I are like-minded in this regard. I'm looking for the human element, if you will. Like the one about Natalie Monroe. It wasn't about anything she had accomplished. It was about her. The one about Stella Gray. It It wasn't about anything she had accomplished. It was about her. And it's like, let's get to know her.
Yeah.
You know, I've always lived in a space mentally where I want to get to the bottom, to the depths. And sometimes I have to really watch myself and ask myself if am I pushing too hard? Am I asking too much in terms of getting people to come out of their comfort zone? Because to me, it's not uncomfortable, you know, for various reasons and past experiences. You know, I want to get to know you. That's just kind of how I operate unconsciously, you know. So to me, it's like, if we're going to tell stories, let's tell stories, you know. Let's tell stories that inspire and that make people think, that make people reflect on their own lives. And so I was looking for that kind of stuff. And, you know, with Natalie, for example, just one-on-one conversations with her, I found her to be a very fascinating person, a very unique individual with a very free spirit and a very individualistic way of thinking. And it's kind of like, if I interview her, I'll be able to see how she works, how her mind works, how things click in her head. You know, so it's kind of for my own edification, my own education, if you will. And I feel like if I'm growing and learning from the person that I'm interviewing, same thing with the article on Corinne Dantzler, you know, it's kind of like, if I'm learning and growing from listening to this person, I know that the readers will too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it appears to me that they want to. I hear kids talking about the paper, like, "Oh my gosh, did you know that? Did you see that about?" Which is really neat, because they wouldn't ask those questions. They wouldn't know to ask those questions, or they might not even talk to those students, those friends.
Yeah, I think it's cool, kind of like what Steve says, you're getting to know like the human element. I think sometimes we're in an environment where we're so, you know, like hyper focused on academics and what they're doing well in school and how they operate in school, but it's like we're actually getting to know them outside the four walls of what is Davidson Day and what is the Davidson Day student. So it kind of just sheds light on who they are internally as a person, if you take everything else away, like who are you at your core. So, which is great.
Yeah, as an observer up here, I see you both as people who are comfortable promoting others in the same space. So while you can function in front of a crowd on center stage, you don't need it. You are certainly comfortable elevating that person next to you, even to the point of like pushing them, as you had mentioned, Steve. And I've seen you, Jillian, in roles, like literally in roles on stage where you're not the lead, but you're next to the lead, and then your character elevates the lead. Like, it's phenomenal. And so in what way does that translate into your work in the paper?
I think for me, it stems back to the beginning of high school. I was just really shy and didn't know how to put myself out there. And I, like my sisters and my friends that I made throughout high school, helped push me into the person I am today, and do theater and be able to do contemporary ensemble and not be afraid to put myself out there. So in a way, I want to give back to the community and give back to the people who've helped me make me who I am today, and give them their own voice and give them their own story. Because I bet there's people we've published and people in the future who are scared to put themselves out there and don't know how to do it. I think this would be a perfect way for them to really make that happen.
So do you have hopes or goals or objectives for the paper? Or are you letting it be what it is to be? What's your plan for it?
Both. Mostly the organic nature of it. It's what's most enjoyable. And we both, Jill and I both agreed, we're not going to set specific dates of when we're going to publish and how many articles per issue. We don't want to lock ourselves into that kind of thing. But going forward, as Jilly graduates and the newspaper is going to continue, I do plan to make it a newspaper into a club format, and to try to recruit that way enough staff that we can keep things moving, so we can assign roles. Okay, you write an article about this, you write an article about that. I like to give people independence and autonomy. Somebody comes with an idea of something they want to write about, I'd rather they go with that than me give them something to write about, or the editor get them something to write about. Because when people are writing about things they want to write about, they're going to be invested in it. So
and they'll have fun with it.
Then I have fun with it too, yeah. So I like things to be organic. Things, ideas for topics for articles come from people's minds. So it's kind of like I don't like too much rigidity. That's kind of how I work in the classroom. It's kind of how I work as a coach.
Right.
I got a plan, but I'm always ready to go in 5 different directions if I have to.
Yeah, and I mean it's working so far, right? The popularity of the paper is obvious, and then as I mentioned earlier, the feedback the podcast is receiving just by hearing stories from our community that we have an opportunity to highlight. It seems to be connecting with an audience. So from that point, do you feel like the community, as you've been offering to it, has been supportive of you in return, or supportive of you first and empowering you to do those things?
I definitely think so, especially from the staff. Like, after our first article was published, the amount of staff that came up to me and just with so much love and support, just talking about how amazing this was and what we were doing was really supporting the kids, just I think motivated both me and McGill a lot and showed us that this idea that started just as a little newspaper is really something that people enjoy and people think is important. And I think that is just really important. Yeah.
It started as, hey, Jilly, get over here. And now it's become this thing.
Yeah. I remember one time I was walking out the front door after school and I saw Miss Woods and she's like, "Oh, I love the newspaper." And I was like, "Thank you." She's like, "Your article's good, but it wasn't my favorite." Like, "Oh, thanks, Laura." And she pointed out a different one, which actually was what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the stories, there's also the writers, you know. So it's kind of like when Ada Brown writes an article, when Julia writes an article, I think Diola wrote an article earlier this year, and several others. It's kind of like, okay, this person has a voice now by being writing an article for the newspaper. Generally speaking, I don't look for. That's kind of how my mind works. I don't look for or expect a lot of praise or validation, because if I get it, then I'll get content. If I don't get it, I'll get frustrated. So I'm just going to keep on grinding because I know it's good work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a community as a whole, it sounds like the supportive staff, the contributions from the students. I mean, this is happening daily. What are other aspects of the school that you really feel like are either worth showcasing or make you feel good walking through the doors every day?
Okay, in terms of to write articles about, or just generally about the school?
I think generally.
For me, it always comes back to the students. You mentioned composition class earlier. That's a course, especially in the first couple assignments where they're writing personal narratives, where I feel a sort of wonder at how amazing is kind of a cheesy word, but how in depth, how rich, how nuanced their lives are. Like things that they're dealing with that I wouldn't know just being their English teacher comes out in an essay. And some of the close relationships I've had with students have sprung from those early composition essays in the beginning of the year over several years. So it's like what you were saying earlier, everybody has a story. Let's find that story and bring it out, in my roles as teacher and coach and with the diversity council, everything I do is for the students. I don't care about anything else. And it's kind of like, only time I get upset, frustrated, annoyed with this school is when I see greatness in students and they don't see it in themselves, and I can't shake it. I can't shake them hard enough to make them see it. Don't just sit there being disinterested. Be curious. Have a sense of wonder. This is an awesome school and an awesome world that we're living in. So I'm always pushing. I mean, I appreciate my colleagues, and I have a lot of good friends in amongst my colleagues. But the students are where the stories are.
Jillian, I'll direct this toward you and Steve. Please answer if you feel so inclined. But you're a senior, right? So you've done some time here at the school. When did you get to Davidson Day?
Kindergarten.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
let's really spin and reflect. In your opinion, what's, to use this cheesy word, amazing? What's so amazing about the students' stories, about the community here that's worth investing in as you look back and you're like, we've got to keep doing this. We need to put more energy behind that. What does that look like?
I think we have a small enough school that this can happen. And sometimes it surprises me that our school is so small and we don't know these things about each other.
Wow.
And I just feel like it's very important to me that we connect on a deeper level because there's so few kids in our grades. Like, I would consider everyone family. I've known them since I was 5. I've grown up with them. I learned how to read with them. It's like, why don't I know this about you? Why don't I want to know this about you, and I want everyone else to know this about you because these people that I've been with all my life are so important to me.
Yeah.
And I think everything they do is so special. And I just feel the need to share that with everyone else because I feel like it's what the people here deserve, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're proud of the way you've grown up here and the people you've been able to grow up with. And it's like, hey, this is us. This is our school, and our school's made this space for us. So we should care to know each other.
It's like I have so much love for this place because it's the place I've been for 13 years. I feel like it's one way I can just give back and make the school a better place and make the school a much closer environment.
Can I chime in a little bit on that question?
Yeah, of course.
Kind of her response made me think of this, that I think it was Miss Woods again. I was having a conversation with, and she said, "It's not really a newspaper, Steve. It's more like a magazine." You know how funny she is. I was like, "Yeah, you got a point." And I think that's part of what our vision was, really, that a newspaper provides information and lets you know when things are happening, lets you know things that have happened. Whereas a magazine, you could argue, is more of a format to tell broader stories.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot to celebrate at this school. You know, no place is perfect, and we're not perfect, but there's a lot to celebrate at this school. And you know, to me, it's beneath the layers where you find the stuff to celebrate.
Yeah.
You know, when I was doing the article on Stella, she was talking about her various ailments that she lives with on a daily basis, and I was just like, almost in tears, not of sadness, but just of feeling inspired by her.
Yep.
You know, and it's kind of like I can envision her walking across that stage in May, and nobody knows, you know, how inspiring she is. And it's kind of like, you know, that our newspaper, I feel, has sort of almost like a sacred duty, if you will, sacred mission to bring out as many of those stories as we can. You know, not like not just strictly in a marketing sense, look at our school, we're cool,
Right.
but on a real spiritual sense, like we're human, we're real, you know?
Yeah. I know we call it like untold stories, but really they're unique stories, you know? Like it makes you understand that everybody has something special and unique about them, but you just have to find it. Yeah. Or maybe they even have, I think that's it too. I think the people you're interviewing too are also finding it, you know, for themselves. So it's kind of self-discovery in its own, which is great. One more thing.
When I interviewed Corinne, she was saying that. She's like, "Oh, I never really talked about this before, like my Montessori years, and I never really thought about how it all connects, how my various schools I've been to all connect." So it was kind of a self-growth process for her being interviewed, you know. So yeah, just to validate what you just said.
Sometimes you don't know how cool you are until somebody's like, "You're actually really cool," and then you're like, am I?
Meanwhile, Steve and Jillian are like two sneaky masterminds.
Yeah.
Like, this intentionality of showing people who they are and then sharing it with the world.
Yeah, you're kind of putting a mirror up to their face and like, look how cool you are.
Genius.
Yeah, really genius. Speaking of genius, rapid fire questions.
Oh, God.
Did you like that segue? Thank you. All right, so each time.
And JT is in the room.
All right. We do rapid fire questions on our podcast. Sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're serious. You just don't know. That's the luck of the draw of the rapid fire questions. Okay. I'm going to ask you about 4 each. All right. So we're just going to go.
Okay.
Jillian, you're up first.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Action movie or rom-com?
Usually action movie, but Anything But You just came out, and that's like the best rom-com I've ever seen in my entire life.
What's it called?
Anyone But You.
Anyone But You? What streaming service?
It was out in theaters. I don't know if it's on a streaming service yet, but it was great, and now I'm really into rom-coms.
Okay, so now we're a rom-com.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Permission to change your mind.
Right. Okay, Steve, this one's for you. I already feel like I know the answer. Bookworm or social media?
Bookworm.
Wow, that's so surprising.
But I have Instagram, so I'm on social media and I post stuff or whatever. But yeah, definitely books.
Books. Gotcha. Okay, Jillian, magic carpet or your own personal robot?
You never thought about this one before?
I've never thought about this. I think a magic carpet.
See, exactly.
Right.
Now, that's what I'm saying. Robots scare me a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was
But magic
thinking.
carpet, like imagine if you could beat all the traffic.
Exactly. Robot, what could you do with that? It's going to take over the world.
Right. And it might break down. But a magic
Exactly.
carpet is magic. Okay, Steve, musical concert or a play?
Musical concert. Not by a large margin, but yeah, musical concert.
What's the last musical concert you went to?
Been a minute. Went to see Branford Marsalis Quartet in Durham about 3-4 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome. What a band.
All right, Jillian, back to you. If you had to write a book, what theme would it be based on?
She might write a book.
Yeah.
I need to think about this. Oh my goodness. What theme would it be based on? Oh my goodness, this is so hard. I would probably write a book based on the lives of teenage girls because I feel like that's something people don't talk about, like really talk about what's the word I'm looking for? The
true essence.
The true essence of it. That is exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. I will read it. Let me know when it comes out.
I will.
All right, Steve, if you had one day to do whatever you wanted to do, what would you do?
Assuming that my shins and my right tibia stress fracture is free from pain, I would hurdle all day long.
Ooh, nice. All day long.
That's it.
That's it?
Maybe some pickup basketball in there.
Okay.
But...
You're getting active.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, Jillian, what's the biggest learning experience you have had?
Wow, these questions are deep.
Yeah, they start out silly,
Yeah.
but then they get serious.
This is slow fire. It's just not rapid fire.
Oh.
Requires deep thought fire.
Yeah.
A big learning experience I had was with cheer. Over the years, I started cheer sophomore year, and I remember feeling before every halftime performance like I was about to throw up and how nervous I was and how much I just couldn't handle it. And yesterday, I had my last halftime performance ever and how there's no nerves. And I think I learned how to deal with my nerves and how not everything is going to turn out in shambles like I used to think.
Cool. All right. And Steve, what is your biggest strength?
He asked me to brag about myself.
Yeah, you have to.
We already discussed it, actually. My biggest strength is my ability to see into people and help them pull out the best in themselves.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So, I'm the counselor. So, of course, I have to talk mental health, mental wellness. All right. As we know, research shows that developing like a very regular writing activity increases your experiences of health and wellness, which I don't think a lot of people know how much writing actually does help, which is why I always say for mental health, journaling is so, so, so important. Not only does it help you keep track of like how you feel, and your ups and downs and the waves that come by. But it's really great to have a journal sometimes, and you go back to like one of the worst days you've ever had, and it's just like, I survived. Like, I thought I wasn't going to make it, and look at me now, right? So it helps us work through our different emotions and our thoughts, and also it provides us with the strategies to help with stress. Do you guys journal?
Yeah, I do.
I thought you were going to ask if they were ever stressed.
No, we know that.
That's an easy one.
Yeah. Okay. So we journal. We love that. I would expect for writers to journal. All right. So according to the Journal of Experimental Psychology, they found that journaling, not only journaling, but writing, just in particular, like even writing in. Hey, we got 2 English teachers here. Give it up for the English teachers.
We're stacked.
According to the Journal of Experimental Psychology, writing helps to boost your mental clarity. And also, when individuals write for at least 20 minutes about their emotions or about a specific topic, it could be any topic, they have more mental clarity compared to those who didn't.
I mean, you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but
Totally
you're welcome. Yes. Thank you to you guys. So we are just going to go down the list of the benefits of writing. Okay, we just talked about mental clarity. That's number 1. Number 2 is self-esteem, which I thought was so cool that Jillian, you kind of talked about that earlier, how Steve just saying like, hey, come here. You're going to like, let's do this. And you wrote something, you're like, I don't know if this is going to be good. And you gave it back to him. He was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, so good, right? So it helps with self-esteem. It also builds your attention span. All right, I know we love our tablets and we love our phones and we like social media, but you know how like sometimes if you're like on TikTok, Instagram, you look at something for like 20 seconds and you're like, okay, boop, done.
Yeah.
Or like if you're looking at a video that's like more than 5 minutes long, you're like, I don't know if my attention span can last for more than 5 minutes, right? Okay, so if you at least write 20 minutes a day, it will help your attention span, which is really important when you get out of school and go to college. Right?
Yeah,
okay.
That's a life skill. Well, I mean, it's worth building into an email. It seems academic, but it becomes a life skill.
It becomes a life skill. Yeah. Imagine listening to somebody talk and then you tune out after 20 seconds.
Scroll.
Like, next. All right. It also helps you to express your feelings. It enhances your creativity. And most importantly, it strengthens your memory, right? Okay. We have proof that handwriting can build unique brain connections. And also the sensory that you get from writing, right? Mm-hmm. The smell of the pen, how your pen glides on the paper, seeing what your handwriting looks like, you know, that really helps to build connections in your brain, which is super important because we don't want to grow old and not remember anything.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I think then, you know, once there's writing, there's reading, and what we should be doing is reading more of these untold stories.
We should.
So if you guys keep writing them, I assure you people will keep reading them.
Yes.
And that will help us all a little bit, not just on the writing side and all the benefits that come from writing, but to read and learn more about each other.
Yeah, I just want to address that list a little bit in regards to journaling, especially, but writing in general. Mm-hmm. I've always looked at it as a two-pronged attack. Writing is a process of self-discovery and the process of self-expression. Mm-hmm. While you're writing, you find out things that are on your mind, you didn't realize were on your mind. Mm-hmm. And by putting the words to the page, you're making a statement to yourself. Even if you're the only person who reads it, it's out there now. I just expressed myself. So in that sense, it's artistic. It's an art form. Mm-hmm. I would also define it as a form of meditation, because if meditation's purpose is to quiet the mind and slow down the mind, writing does that, you know. So the benefits of it are enormous before you start being all self-conscious. What are people going to think? You know, I think it's so important just to get words out of your brain and somewhere you can deal with them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely helps to focus and shift your attention on one very specific thing. Like you said, it helps to quiet the mind and just think about one thing, which I don't think we do a lot. Yeah.
As observers, as readers, as writers, as listeners, what is something that motivates you? What is a lyric, a verse, a mantra, a quote that moves you? When you read it, you go to it because you know you need it. It propels you forward or picks you up.
There's a composition, jazz song by McCoy Tyner, my favorite piano player, called Contemplation. I always say the opening notes of that song, where he's using his left hand a lot, along with the bass. So it's a very kind of heavy, soft, soothing sound. Puts me in that right place. Plus the title of the song, it's like telling me, okay, it's time to go inside.
My senior quote is Billy Joel from Vienna. You can get what you want, or you can just get old. And I think being able to do the newspaper and share these stories has really, well, backtrack. I want to be an English teacher when I'm older, and definitely.
We got 3 English teachers.
That's addition. That's multiplication.
Yay!
And I think
We've done our part.
Yeah.
starting the newspaper has begun to get me what I want. It's the beginning of a very big journey for me. And I feel like McGill initially asking me to write this for him, and he saw the potential in me, gave me 100 times more confidence that I could actually be a successful English teacher and do what I've always wanted to do.
Ooh,
So
that's powerful. That's amazing. Now, I would suggest, and I think maybe you agree, JT, that Untold Stories is a significant contribution back to the Davidson Day community. Is this, in what other ways do you feel like you've contributed while in your time here?
I think, I don't know. I think I've definitely contributed to theater, and that's definitely a way I've contributed. You don't realize it until after you perform how much you have impacted the people that watch you, and I bet Taylor feels the same way. It's a bigger deal to people than I thought, and it touches people more than I ever imagined, and I feel like that's definitely a way I've given some of the younger kids confidence as well to go on stage and do the things that I do.
Yeah, and just to add context, I think I've shared with you, Jillian. Just to add context, I think I've shared with you, Jillian, in our house. Taylor obviously is theater experience and got to share a stage with you. And Mean Girls was, in my mind, the most memorable of all the shows I've seen here. But it isn't Taylor, it's Jordan who sings Meet the Plastics and like shouts your lyrics from the shower. And so, yes, you've impacted not just, the castmates, but like your classmates. Oh, bars. So yeah, I think that's very very real thing you're saying. It extends beyond the stage.
I would just add into Jilly's answer that she is impactful because she's an incredibly good listener. She's a little mini counselor, you could say. As for me, I think it all comes down to the energy you project. I wake up every morning saying, I'm going to give everything I can today, whatever that is. When I go home, I'm going to bed. But while I'm here, I'm going to be what I need to be for whoever needs me. And there's always random things happening in the course of the day. So I'm not trying to plan it. I'm trying to be ready for whatever comes up and be the best Steve McGill I can in every situation. I think if I'm doing that, I'm doing what I need to do without listing any kind of stuff that I've done, because I don't really care about that.
Yeah, well, you being the best Steve McGill you can is about to happen in a couple of minutes here. I don't know if you can hear the hallway staring, but the students are lined up at the door trying to get in. So let me ask you this last question. What can we do better for you guys? What can the school do to support, not just support you, but just to take care of you, to help keep taking care of each other, in your opinions?
Regarding the newspaper?
I think regarding your experience in general.
I don't know, because I have a philosophy that nobody owes anybody anything. So any role I take on because I chose to take it on. So simple enough. Be good people, be good friends, give each other the benefit of the doubt when people are not being cool.
I agree with that completely. Give everyone a chance and just live in harmony.
Amen.
Thank you guys for filling in the gaps of telling the stories that most people do not hear. I think it's really important. A lot of times we think about the lead actress, but sometimes the supporting actress or actor is the most important to help carry.
Yeah. And it's just another way to take care of each other. I think as long as we're doing that, we're doing the best we can each day. Thank you guys so much for being here, for being our guests.
You're welcome.
Read Untold
Thank you.
Stories. If
Thanks,
not,
guys.
we'll share it with you.
3 cheers for English.
Everybody has a story, and if we learned anything today from Steve and Jillian, it's to listen to those stories, to read about those stories, to save space so people feel comfortable sharing their stories, and that makes us all a little bit better. It's a great time to be a patriot. We love you guys. Thank you for listening to the Davidson Day Community Podcast. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast player.